On today's show, Howard Beck joins us to talk about Game 7, baby. We'll talk about who has more pressure on them, and then we'll play What is a Lock this offseason. James Harden to the Rockets, Kyrie Irving to the Lakers, a bunch of coaches, who's on the move. We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You are Locked On to the NBA. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast. Appreciate each and every one of you for jumping in and hanging out with us on Locked On NBA, making us your first listen. Be an everydayer, subscribe, and follow for free. Just search Locked On NBA wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, where you can also find a daily Locked On show that covers your team 5 days a week. And Howard Beck may be on one of those shows this week or next week or last week or whenever. Bringing in Howard Beck, writer at GQ and formerly of many, many other places. He's one of the greats in NBA media right now. Howard Beck, what you got for me?
Nick, how you doing, man? I'm just recovering from the series finale of Succession. But other than that, I'm doing well.
As is my entire Twitter timeline. Everybody's in that show.
That's why you have to watch it live, or at least on a slight delay at most, without getting on social media at all, because if you get on social media after a finale of a series of that magnitude, you are going to have it spoiled. So I had to jump right on it.
Oh, absolutely. On today's show, we'll talk a little bit about Game 7. Game 7, baby, is tonight, and so we'll talk about it, who has the most pressure on them. We'll talk about the referee crew that was named earlier today. Some people are getting in their feelings about that. And then we'll mostly focus on, we'll play a game called Is This a Lock? Talk about some free agency rumors, talk about some trades that could happen, some coaches that could move. Is Adrian Griffin the coach of the Bucks just because Giannis wanted to? Is James Harden go to the Rockets? Will he start the season with them? We'll talk about all that and break it all down a little bit later. But let's start here. Game 7 is tonight between Boston and Miami. Winner is immortalized in some way, either an 8 seed that beats the Celtics and goes to the finals, or the first team to come back from down 0-3 with the Boston Celtics. Howard Beck, who has the most pressure on them tonight in this game?
The old pressure game. The old pressure game. It's been funny in this series because if I'm recalling correctly, when the Heat were up 3-0, Charles Barkley declared that all the pressure is now on the Heat, which seemed insane when one team was facing elimination and a sweep, and it was the higher seed beyond that. But Chuck insisted the Heat had all the pressure on them for Game 4. Maybe he was onto something. Maybe they had too much pressure on them to complete the sweep, and they cracked. I don't know, but that was interesting. And then as soon as the Celtics won one, then I think Reggie was doing I can't remember. Did he say it was also all the pressure was on the Heat, or is all the pressure on the Celtics now to win it at home? The pressure's always been on the Celtics, right? They've been, behind this entire time. They were facing this humiliating sweep. But I think, look, by the time we get to 3-3, no matter how you got to 3-3, it's Game 7. Like, this is not the early parts of a series where pressure shifts back and forth, momentum shifts back and forth. No, this is literally win or go home time. So the pressure's on everybody, but the real question is who has the bigger consequence for losing, right? It's not even about pressure. It's more about, if you lost, which team is facing a more dire consequence? And that's the Celtics. It's always been the Celtics. They're the better team. They're the higher seed. They won like 13 more games or whatever it was in the regular season. They came into the postseason as the consensus either favorite or co-favorite, not just to win the East, but to win it all. The Celtics and Bucks, the consensus around the league was those were the two teams, with all due respect to the Nuggets, those were the two teams that everybody had their eye on. Whoever comes out of the East, everybody felt was going to win the championship. We weren't even sure who was going to come out of the West because people weren't entirely sold on the Nuggets. Now everybody's all of a sudden pretending that, I've always thought they were the greatest. Calm down, people. Like the overcorrection people are now making to make themselves look magnanimous or wise about the Nuggets is incredible right now. The Celtics and Bucks were the favorites, and as soon as the Heat knocked out the Bucks, it was definitely the Celtics. So, yeah, not going to be great for either team here. If the Heat lose, we're back to the pressure question. Yeah, you don't want to be the first team in NBA history to blow a 3-0 lead, and especially in the conference finals when you're this close to making the NBA finals, and with a team built around Jimmy Butler that we just don't even know how much more lifespan they've got as a contender. So the consequences could be pretty brutal there, not to mention just the humiliation of going down in history as the first team ever to blow the 3-0 lead. But that said, nobody expected them to be here. We didn't expect them to make it out of the play-in at a certain point after they lost their first play-in game. We didn't expect them to beat the Bucks. We weren't sure, series after that. We weren't about, whether they were playing the Knicks and then when they were playing the Celtics. Like, we've never been sure that the Heat belonged this far given the regular season they had. So while it's awful for anybody losing this game 7, I still think it's the Celtics who have the most pressure on them. They're the ones who were supposed to be here. They're the ones who were in the finals last year. They're the ones who were supposed to be going back to the finals and this time winning a championship. So, either way, someone's pretty devastated by about 11 o'clock Eastern tonight, 11:30.
The Heat have found money right now, right? And we don't think about it like that because they've been here before. They've played this team in the Eastern Conference Finals before. They've been to the finals recently. Like, it's a name that we associate with being here, but they're not. This iteration of this team is not supposed to be here. I did a playoff preview interview with every single host that covers a playoff team for Locked On before this. We posted it on Locked On NBA and their channels and all that. I left the Miami Heat one with Wes Goldberg. Me and him sat down and I asked him a whole bunch of questions about the Heat. I have not felt more like down about a team after leaving an interview with like a beat writer or somebody that covers the team than I did with this Heat team, because they just been all over the place all year. It was so hard to figure out what they were. And now they're in the spot where, okay, well, we've seen this in spurts this season. Like, they'll play a game like this and then they'll play 2 games where they don't look like this at all. And now they've just been on it. And this has sort of been like this in this Eastern Conference Finals. We've seen this team go up 3-0 and then lose these last 3 games because they've just been this on and off team. They're obviously dealing with injuries too, which has really hurt them. Another thing that people are really bringing up today, the referee crew was announced for Game 7. Tony Brothers, Scott Foster, John Goebel, referees that, for whatever reason, many reasons, I guess, NBA fans know. Do you buy into this? The referees are chosen and like this is a bad look for the league, all the things that are being said. Apparently the Heat are 0-10 in games with Scott Foster and Tony Brothers this season. Now, they're underdogs in 8 of those games, so we should point that out. That was a Tom Haberstroh stat earlier today. But do you buy into this referee conspiracy? Should I play the conspiracy music? Do you buy into any of that?
Wow, that's a nice touch. You just have that like queued up. That's amazing.
If I covered the Dallas Mavericks, we need it at all times.
Oh, good Lord. I don't care if they'd announced the refereeing crew as Larry, Curly, and Moe, Huey, Louie, and Dewey, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, the 3 Musketeers, any other famous trios, the 3 Amigos. I don't care. I just do not effing care. People, if the first thing you do the morning of a playoff game is look up the officials, if you're looking it up because you're just curious, fine. If you're a reporter doing it because it's just part of the routine, I'm going to make an exception for other media members here. If you are looking up the officials for the sole purpose of immediately conniving in your own mind some sort of conspiracy theory or worrying about how this is going to impact your team because of some bullshit correlation that you think is causation, the 0-10, the Foster's Chris Paul thing, which is total nonsense, by the way. If you are obsessing over this stuff, you've lost the plot. You've just lost it. This is not what you should be thinking about as an NBA fan. The teams can. There's a practical matter for the teams, right? Because and your Mavericks have done this for a long time because Cuban is obsessive about the referees in a very unhealthy way. But for the teams, it makes sense on some level if you are documenting tendencies because certain referees might tend to call certain kinds of calls, traveling or carrying, or block charge might have a certain tendency. You want to know those things because it may actually impact the way you play the game, or maybe you have a particular player who gets into trouble with a certain kind of call. Like, there's some practical elements of it on an analytics basis because there are some tendencies, right? As much as the league tries to create a referee training program, and they do, Like the league obsesses about this on a very micro level, trying to make sure that everybody calls the game the same way. We know that's not realistic. Every referee is going to have certain strengths and weaknesses and maybe certain tendencies. That can happen even as much as the NBA tries to make them all uniform. So it makes sense to track tendencies if you are the team itself. Although, again, if you ask coaches about this, some will say, listen, I don't want my guys thinking about that. We just got to play the freaking game. We got enough to worry about just trying to execute our stuff and trying to read what the defense is doing or read what the other offense is doing, whatever, and react to it and have your mind there. If you have spent 3% of your brain worrying about the officiating crew and what tendencies they come in with or what grievances you think they might have with you on a personal level, all this crap, you're going to lose based on just focusing on the wrong things. So even for the teams, you might want to look at it, but you don't want to spend too much time on it. For fans, listen, I as you know, Nick, I have a rule. I try not to tell fans what to think and feel. It's your fandom. Do with it what you will. I don't think it's healthy or even justifiable to be thinking about the referees this much, frankly. It's all silliness. And the conspiracy stuff is utter crap. But people love a good conspiracy, and social media is filled with it, not just on the NBA, but on pretty much everything. So there you go.
Talking about conspiracy theories and things that are unknowable, let's talk about some free agency rumors and some things that could happen this offseason, and we'll get into that. And is this a lock coming up? But before we do, let me tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. If you are a person that cares about the referees, maybe this is a time where you think that one team has an advantage, go check it out and see what you can put down on Prize Picks. Right now, they're giving out $1 million on the daily Superflex. You can possibly win $1 million if you go to prizepicks.com/million and you make 6 correct picks. All you have to do is pick 6 players, pick a more or less or an over-under on their points, rebounds, assists, any kind of different thing. They have MLB as well, all kinds of different sports. Go check it out at Prize Picks. And again, you can win $1 million at prizepicks.com/million. You can also deposit $100, get 100% deposit match with the promo code Locked On. Again, it's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA, making us part of your day. Again, we have a Locked On NBA show that covers your team every day. I cover the Mavericks on Locked On Mavericks. We have a bunch of different shows that cover your team. Go check them out in the link in the description below. Here with Howard Beck, we just talked about Game 7. Now let's get into, is this a lock? I got a bunch of different statements that I'm going to read Howard Beck, and he's going to tell me if he thinks it's a lock or not. I'm fascinated to see if you think any of these things are a lock because it's hard to know some of these.
There are no locks. It's a very topsy-turvy, uncertain world we live in, Nick. There are no locks. Nothing's guaranteed.
It feels that way, especially with some of these things. Let's start with this one. James Harden will start the 2023-24 season with the Houston Rockets. Is this a lock?
Not a lock. Not a lock. I'm thinking more and more that this is more bluff and negotiating ploy than anything else, because I refuse to believe that either Harden or the Rockets actually think this is a good idea, because it's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea, especially for him. He should stay with Joel Embiid, where he has a chance to win championships. If he goes back to Houston, he's basically saying he doesn't care about winning titles. So I'm going to say not a lock. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it's definitely not a lock.
We even heard Jalen Green recently on Paul George's podcast saying, like, hey, this could be not good for us. like to even just suggest
I think it was
that
like it was
put it in the air.
I think Jalen Green was saying it might not be good for him, Jalen Green, because it was like that dude's gonna come in and cut into my usage. So yeah, and my growth. With
regards to Jackson Gatlin, what is the difference between me and us with the Houston Rockets at this at this moment?
Something like that.
Another rumor that has been flying around a lot that could also be a leverage play. Is this a lock? Kyrie Irving will start the 2023-2024 season next to LeBron James with the Los Angeles Lakers.
You know, if we had played this game 1 year ago today, I think I might have. I'm trying to remember at what point it became it seemed like it had serious momentum. A year ago, or at least last summer, I would have thought Kyrie to the Lakers was very, very likely. Especially when they were trying to offload. Well, they weren't trying to offload Westbrook, but they should have been. And if they had, Kyrie would have probably been involved in some massive 17-team deal or something. But Kyrie to the Lakers made sense a year ago. Kyrie to the Lakers does not make sense now. So no, Not a lock. I think he stays with the Mavericks. I'm not sure if I should be congratulating or offering you my condolences, Nick. But
it's one where you just say congrats on the content. That's
congrats on the content. Yes, exactly. You will have no shortage of things to talk about if he is back, as I suspect. They need him and he needs them. There is no team out there that is going to give Kyrie Irving max money, I believe. The Mavericks have his bird rights. They can give him some form of that, right? I don't know if it's a 4-year max, a 5-year max, or if it's just like less than the max over multiple years, or maybe the max on a given year, but only over a 2-year deal, or 1 + 1, 2 + 1. I don't know. The Mavericks can't afford to lose him unless it's in a sign and trade. And even if you say, well, hey, sign and trade to where? Like the Lakers, even if they're acquiring him in a sign and trade or giving up depth that they shouldn't give up, the Lakers just went through this exercise over the last 2 years of giving up all their depth to get a third star, Russell Westbrook, realizing that he was a bad fit. Kyrie would be a better fit, but still, they then cashed out Westbrook to replenish the depth that they'd lost when they went and got Westbrook. So they're going to make the same mistake again now, and have to renounce rights to, Vanderbilt and D'Angelo Russell and possibly, Bamba, Beasley, like Hachimura, everybody that they got at the trade deadline, maybe not all of them, but several of those players that they got at the trade deadline that helped them become a decent team again would have to go to sign Kyrie outright. And if it were in a sign and trade, well, who are they sending back to the Mavericks that the Mavericks want? And again, you're still hurting your depth if you're the Lakers to do that. So while I do think LeBron could use another high-level scorer playmaker with him at this stage going into year 21, assuming he doesn't retire. He's not retiring. But like there's a certain logic to it, but Kyrie is such a volatile entity as a player. I don't see it. And besides that, like I say, the Lakers end up having to give up too much. He's staying in Dallas.
Good and interesting to hear. If you're a Dallas Mavericks fan,
you sound really excited to have him back on the team that you cover.
It's their only option. I mean, we Isaac and I have said this from the beginning. It's like the Mavericks have to bring him back. They've made this bed, and now they're going to lie in it, and they're going to and Kyrie Irving will be there. The third and fourth picks are two that have been in the rumors recently. There's been some rumors about them. Is this a lock? The Portland Trailblazers will make the third pick in the NBA draft.
I think the Blazers, there are no locks when it comes to the draft, especially and especially when you're talking about trades. There are other years where we've thought all these picks were going to get traded because of certain similar factors to this year. This is the year it happens. The Blazers are trading the third pick.
Wow.
The Blazers are trading the third. If not on draft night, then maybe they make the pick, but trade the guy later. It seems like they are very much sold on continuing with Dame, and that Dame is still very much sold on staying with the Portland Trailblazers. And if that's the case, another 19 or 20-year-old ain't getting you where you need to go in this, rapidly shrinking window that you have with Damian Lillard. So, they should be either trading the third pick for veteran help or the third pick plus Anthony Simons, whatever it may be. I feel like this one's going.
Fascinating. Do you see any possible destinations or anybody that would be interested and have enough to give them to get the third pick? Because could be Scoot Henderson, which would be a huge get for any team out there.
Huge get for any team. And, not an impossible fit next to Dame, but you're not going to have Dame and Anthony Simons and Scoot. Is there a scenario where they draft Scoot, assuming Scoot's still on the board there, right? Assuming that, that Charlotte didn't take him. If you're drafting Scoot and keeping him, Scoot and Dame, well, now you're trading Anthony Simons, right? So there's always that possibility. I don't know exactly. It's hard to know how teams are valuing these picks right now. So when you say what's the package, every team may have a little bit different feel for let's assume Scoot is the one there, and let's see teams have everyone's gonna have a different assessment of him. Is it a DeAndre Ayton for Scoot plus some stuff? Is there a you got your eyebrows raised there.
The Phoenix Suns fans would like to know what other stuff we have to get to.
I'm just saying, I think other teams under pressure this offseason to make radical moves. It feels like this is the time when the Suns are going to seriously consider moving off of DeAndre Ayton and maybe even Chris Paul. If Scoot is available, Scoot and Devin Booker together, Scoot, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant for some span of time. Given that Chris Paul is breaking down, I don't know. There's some logic there, and Dame has always needed, anything really in the front court. DeAndre Ayton's got his flaws, but he's a good two-way player. I don't know. I don't know what the exact structure of that trade would be, but is there something along those lines? I think the Trailblazers are going to have to absolutely consider everything. If they're keeping Dame, they can't just make their picks and roll on into next season. They've got to make some serious moves to improve around Dame and get some veterans.
Coming up, let's talk about a couple more picks. Will the Houston Rockets make the fourth pick? Will Zach LaVine start this season with the Chicago Bulls? And then we'll get into some coaches. And are they a lock? We'll talk about that coming up. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA. I'm here with Howard Beck talking about all kinds of NBA players, coaches, things, and are they a lock? I'll read a statement and I'll say, is this a lock? We talked about Portland Trailblazers at the third pick. Now let's do the fourth pick. The Houston Rockets will make the fourth pick in the NBA draft. Is this a lock, Howard Beck?
I think this is a lock, or pretty darn close. This might be their last chance to make a high pick for a while. They definitely are moving in a direction, and we saw it with the Ime Udoka hire. They want to start winning now. They feel like they've bottomed out for long enough. They've gotten some high picks, and they're gonna they've got a boatload of cap room to spend this summer, whether that's on James Harden or Chris Middleton or somebody else. So they can get their veteran help in free agency. They don't need to flip the fourth pick for another vet. And because this might be, if they're successful in actually turning this around soon and starting to become a competitive team, they may not be picking this high again for a long time, unless, of course, the Nets bottom out and they still have possession of all those Nets picks. But listen, in terms of what their own agenda is it time to turn the corner? If it is, then this is also your last chance to make a really high pick. So I think they make the pick themselves.
Is this a lock? Zach LaVine will start the 2023-2024 season with the Chicago Bulls. The rumors were swirled up this weekend.
I must have missed those while I was busy watching Succession and just generally trying to just, have a life outside of the NBA. What Zach LaVine rumors have I missed?
Just there's an NBC Sports report that, the Bulls are considering and thinking about moving Zach LaVine at this point and moving on. They didn't make the playoffs, and here they are with Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and trying to figure out what their next steps are.
I think about lots of things. I think about trading Zach LaVine all the time. The Bulls have never seemed like they have the appetite once they picked this direction to go all in on being mediocre. It doesn't seem like they have an appetite to try anything else. And all the signals that they were sending from the front office in the, postscript on this season were leaning toward, it seemed, sticking with this group and just hoping for better health and better luck, I guess. I don't think he should start the season with the Bulls. I don't think DeRozan or Vooch should either. I think the Bulls should be tearing it down and trying something else. But they seem pretty satisfied with being on the treadmill of mediocrity. So I'll be more surprised if he's traded than that.
We'll just do a couple quick ones. Russell Westbrook returns to the Clippers. Is this a lock?
I'm going to say yes. I know that they can only offer him, according to Bobby Marks, the non-Bird exception, which is $3.8 million. And obviously that's a massive, massive pay cut for Russell Westbrook, but he's made a ton. And who's giving him a big contract at this stage of his career? Among the teams that have cap room, he doesn't really make sense. I think there are two other teams that make sense for Westbrook to me. Maybe the Heat, if they wanted to, if they're keeping it all together and they want to, add him to Jimmy and Bam. Maybe the Suns, depending on how they're looking at Chris Paul and his longevity. And then I also thought, could the Grizzlies make a run at him because Ja is going to miss possibly half the season if he's suspended that long? I don't know. I was just, toying around with it in my head. I think more likely than not, Westbrook, he played well with the Clippers. They certainly, I think, would like to bring him back. No, they can't pay him as much as some other teams out there maybe can, but it's a good fit. He's home in LA. I think he stays.
It's wild that we're at a point in the NBA and just in how the cap works and how salaries work and Westbrook's reputation, where there's a player that was like the best player on his team in a playoff, like several playoff games this past year, that is also going to get paid close to the minimum that like no other team would pay him. It's such a weird spot that we're in with Russell Westbrook, where I think people acknowledge that he was good for the Clippers in the playoffs, but now no, I don't think anyone else in the NBA is like willing to bring him in.
And somebody might give him like their non-taxpayer mid-level or something, which is, like 10 million or something, right? Like, yeah, I mean, like he could get up there. But wouldn't you rather, take the 3.8, stay home in LA, stick with the Clippers, stick with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and try to make a run at a title?
Khris Middleton, you mentioned him before. Is this a lock? Khris Middleton starts the season with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Not a lock, although I do think that the Bucks have to do everything possible to keep him. They're in a really tough spot, the Bucks, because Middleton's up there in years and mileage and has had some, recent injury history. Brook Lopez is a free agent and he's up there in years and mileage. But like, what else are you doing? Like, I do think they need to get younger, and I do think they need to replenish around Giannis. But if you lose either or both of those guys, they're not exactly in a position to be able to easily replace them. So not a lock, but I think he stays.
Speaking of replacing with the Milwaukee Bucks, they have replaced their coach with Adrian Griffin. He is now the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. Is this a lock that Adrian Griffin is the coach of the Bucks because Giannis wanted him?
It's a factor. You got to listen to your franchise star, especially when that guy's a two-time MVP who also won you a championship and who also can be a free agent in a couple of years and who you're trying to keep happy and make it clear that you're in a partnership with him. So yeah, that's just the modern NBA. Like that's nothing sinister or anything there. I don't think it's the sole reason. Adrian Griffin has been a guy who's been high on a lot of people's lists for years. He's been an assistant coach for many, many years with multiple franchises, and a former player, and somebody who I think everybody has expected for some time was going to become a head coach, and people think is going to be a very good head coach. So you don't pick him just because Giannis wants him. The idea that when you're going through your process and you think you've got the guy who you believe as a franchise is the best fit, the best option, and then running it by your superstar makes sense toward the end there. So it's a chicken and egg thing here. I don't think they go to Griffin because of Giannis. I think he's more at the end of that process.
Is this a lock? Nick Nurse will be coaching the Philadelphia 76ers to start the 2023-24 season. According to Locked On Sixers own Keith Pompey, sources have said that reuniting with Daryl Morey is very enticing to Nick Nurse.
Probably enticing to Daryl too. So, Nick Nurse coached the Rio Grande Valley Vipers. There's too many.
I think that's right.
Yeah, the RGV. Yeah, Rio Grande Valley Vipers. There's just a lot going on there for a G League team name. So yeah, Nurse had been there once upon a time. He and Daryl have a familiarity there. Nick Nurse, obviously regarded as one of the best tacticians in the NBA. There's some logic there. But if we're going to go back to the premise of your prior question about the Bucks, what does Joel Embiid want? And is Nick Nurse the guy that Embiid thinks can get them to finally break through? I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, among the guys who are still out there to hire, especially among the ones with a lot of with the longer resumes, it's Nurse, Budenholzer, and Frank Vogel, all of whom have won championships in the last few years. So Nurse seems like the logical one.
Kevin Ollie will be coaching the Detroit Pistons to start the 2023-24 season. Is this a lock?
Feels like we've been on Kevin Ollie to the Pistons for weeks already. I know it's probably been a little less time than that, but I don't know about lock, but it certainly seems like that's the direction it's moving.
There was like a false alarm, him on Instagram posting like about how he had arrived or something. And there was a bunch of Pistons fans thinking like, this is how he announces this. So we'll see if that ends up being, what happens. And, but to your point, it does feel like it's been around because we're looking for any kind of sign from like his Instagram post or anything.
Another thing people should stop doing. Stop. Y'all are spending way too much time trying to like read tea leaves on Instagram posts and like, it's like you got to have better things to do with your lives, people.
Are you saying I shouldn't be doing a whole episode of my podcast based on Kyrie Irving's Instagram live stream? Is that what you're...
That might be in its own category, Nick. I'm not sure it's healthy for you to be watching an entire Kyrie Irving live stream, much less podcasting for then 30 minutes about it. But you know what? You need content. It's a 5-day-a-week podcast. I get it.
Just me and 20,000 other people. We're in there.
20,000 people were watching that live stream?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Let's do one more. Is this a lock? Bob Meyers returns to the Golden State Warriors or stays with the Golden State Warriors, I guess, whichever vernacular you decide.
I think we're going to find out the answer to this one soon. I'll say that much. I think that's coming soon. I don't know for sure what Bob Meyers. I don't think anybody but Bob Meyers knows what Bob Meyers will do. I hope he returns to the Warriors, and I think he probably will, based on relationships and the time investment and the emotional investment. Like, he has 3 young children, and I think a lot of this is about, like, Bob Meyers is not. He's either with the Warriors or he's taking time off. I don't think Bob Meyers. There's all this stuff about, like, well, were the Wizards waiting for him before they hired Michael Winger and all this? Like, I don't think Bob Meyers was ever going to the Wizards or anybody else who might need a GM or who might want to fire their GM to hire him. Like, I don't think any of that was happening. He's at a moment where I think he just needs to and is reassessing just his time commitments and his work-life balance and family time and all that. And they've been through a lot, and it's been a long run, and it's been a mostly very successful run, but it's also been a really stressful run for the Warriors. So I think his relationships with Steph and Clay and Draymond and Steve Kerr and ownership and everything else means he will probably stay and like ride this out until the wheels fall off, whenever that is, however many more years that is. And maybe he finds a way to delegate more or pull back a little bit. Certainly as a free agent, he's also going to get a fat raise. And, every indication that I've heard is that this is not an issue of contract. Bob Meyers will make an incredible salary if he's back. So it's not about whether or not the Warriors want him back or how much of a commitment they're willing to make. It's more about what does he want to do at this stage. Like I say, not a lock, but I'm going to lean that he stays.
For more with Howard Beck, check out the Locked On NBA lineup, all kinds of different shows. We have a show for every single team, so check the link tree or the chartable link in the description below so you can see him, check him on all kinds of different shows. You can go follow him on Twitter at Howard Beck and read everything he's got going on. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On NBA, and we'll be back tomorrow with Game 7, a breakdown. Who knows what's going to happen, and whoever the pressure was on, I hope that they won or lost. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA. Boom.